Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 113. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we are going to talk about the September 27th CMLL 86th anniversary show, which they just announced the lineup this past Wednesday. 7 matches total. We'll be talking about that. We will also be talking about the Grand Prix tournament, which actually led to the whole, had 2 of the matches led to the main event for the anniversary. We'll talk about that. We will also be talking about some of the other news that has happened over the past couple of weeks in Lucha Libre. I think the last show I did was the post show after Dallas won the Amazonas match, which was very underwhelming. Not a lot has been happening as far as news goes in Lucha Libre, which is why I haven't really done a podcast in a while. Even the post I've been doing, the Lucha reports, they've been kind of a lot more about interviews and stuff from Informa and interviews from Mas Lucha, and a lot less newsworthy stuff. Like, there really hasn't been a lot going on in Lucha Libre, other than the stuff that's going on with CMLL. Even with AAA, it's been very quiet. I think they released a few lineups, but they still haven't even announced the card for the September 15th AAA in New York show. They've only announced 2 matches and 1 person being there on the show. For that show, they've announced Tessa versus Taya in a AAA Reina de Reinas match, and a rematch from Triple Mania, Blue Demon Jr. versus Dr. Wagner Jr. And also, they've mentioned Cain Velasquez is going to be appearing on the show. Other than that, that's all they've really announced. And they've had well over a month to just post a lineup or do anything possible to add a little more interest. I don't know if there's going to be enough interest for this show. Tickets didn't sell very well. They went from being in the main Madison Square Garden venue to the Hulu Theater, which is it's on the side of MSG, I think, and it's still a New York show, but it's not as big of a deal as being in MSG, and they really haven't done anything to add more interest. They did announce that they were going to have it on pay-per-view, but they're going to have it on pay-per-view, I think, on regular pay-per-view, which you could order on your satellite or cable providers. I've heard that they're going to do that, but I've also heard they're going to be on Fight TV or some pay-per-view service like that, streaming service. And from what I've heard, it's going to be $30, which I think right away that's going to turn off a lot of fans, especially Lucha fans that are accustomed to both AAA and CMLL offering their biggest shows at anywhere between $10 or practically free. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of interest in this. As usual with Lucha Libre promotions trying to do something bigger, they always end up screwing it up, and I think this is going to be another mistake that AAA makes. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, they were behind Lucha Underground, and that didn't really pan out like they had hoped. That wasn't all their fault. That also had a lot to do with the El Rey network, but that's one of those things that you wish they planned these things a little better, but they didn't. Funny thing is that they had Impact announce that they were going to help promote the show, I think last week, and that basically just gave them 2 weeks of promoting through Impact, which I don't think that's enough. And it doesn't help that AAA hasn't really announced anything. I think they just think Mexicans are going to show up, and and they were okay with that, or Latinos, in New York, and they were perfectly fine with that. I don't know. I mean, they haven't said anything about Los Angeles either. I don't think I'm going to go to that show just because I already bought a ticket for PWG Battle of Los Angeles. I will be at night 1. I can't go to all 3 nights just because it's a pretty expensive ticket, and honestly, I think one show's good enough for me. I don't really mind not seeing. I could handle one live event a week, and I'm okay with that. But anyway, let's get to the CMLL stuff. CMLL on August 30th had their Grand Prix show, and I thought the show was okay, but it wasn't anything blow away. I guess that would count as the big August show. If you remember, a couple of months ago, CML made the plan that they were going to have a monthly big show. So Grand Prix was it for August, and it kind of, I mean, it felt like it. If you're talking about it being a Grand Prix and everybody, the overall feel of it, I think there was some. I don't know. It kind of. I don't think it was as. I don't think it was as good as I think they should. I mean, honestly, I don't think CML really puts too much into any planning or any preparation for celebrations other than the Dia de Muertos shows, which, honestly, that's the artists that actually do a lot of that stuff. But you would hope that CML would do something for all these supposedly big events. They look pretty much the same as every other show. The only difference was in this they had they played the anthem, and they had the military, the everything that goes on with that, the celebration, and it took forever for that to go on. I think it was like a 30-minute waiting period. A lot of people standing up to show their appreciation, to show their patriotism, and but I actually think that kind of hurt the match itself, just because there weren't as many people interested. I'm not going to go through the entire lineup since I already did that on Lucha Talk, but just the big news out of this was that more build up to the three big feuds that have been going on. Oddly enough, the Volador Jr. Forastero feud kind of just died out. It kind of fizzled. It seemed like it was going somewhere, and then it just fizzled out. Especially with poor Forastero, he was in this Grand Prix, and it made the way he was feuding with Volador Jr. You thought that maybe he was going to have an amazing performance, but he ended up being the first guy from Team Mexico eliminated. So you pretty much knew from that moment that the Volador Jr. Forastero feud was officially done. And if you didn't know by that point, you knew at the very end when Volador Jr. focused on Nero Casas and Carbonario afterwards. So you knew that they had moved on from that, which is unfortunate, just because I thought Volador Jr. versus Forastero would have been something good. So that feud pretty much died out for a bit. But the other feuds, they kept going. Microman versus Chamuel, that was built up in this show. They had their first singles match in Arena Mexico, and Chamuel actually beat Microman via DQ when he tossed his mask at Microman, and referee Angel saw that Microman had the mask, so he DQ'd him. That led to mask challenges, and sure enough, that's what one of the matches we'll be getting in the anniversary. The other big feud that has been going on in CML for the past several weeks has been Ciber the Main Man versus Ultimo Guerrero. They had a big singles match that had one of the worst finishes possible, just because it looked very comedic, and they had more matches that followed, trios matches, and more hijinks going on. It looks more like a Benny Hill type of feud, honestly. If you don't know who Benny Hill is, look it up on YouTube and you'll figure out what I mean. But it's really how their matches have been. And even like the interviews and all that stuff, it's just very like cat and mouse type of feel to it, where, Ultimo Guerrero wants the match, Cibernetico wants something different. Ultimo Guerrero wants the hair match, and Cibernetico wants a rematch for the title, the world title, and it's just leading to a bunch of like filler on these shows. While on this show, Gilbert got himself involved. He teamed up with Ciber the Main Man and Titan against Caristico, Mystico, and Ultimo Guerrero, and Ciber and Gilbert did not get along. They've actually been building that up as the whole thing between people constantly asking Ciber if Gilbert is part of the clan. Ciber says he's not part of the clan, that the confusion is that the promotion known as Chaos Lucha Libre in Monterrey started their own clan group, Clan Chaos, and they have Gilbert as Messias in that group. He's one of the members, and people don't realize that he's not part of the actual members of the group that actually works in CMLL, and is kind of not affiliated with the Chaos promotion now. So that's led to they've been feuding over that. Well, that got added to this whole thing with with Gilbert kind of challenging Ultimo Guerrero and Sabre the main man in hair matches. So now we're getting the possibility that might be another feud that's going to happen. And it sure was. It got added. So you basically have those three guys involved. And then came the Grand Prix. The Grand Prix had I'll just go to the final just because I think I want to just continue on with the whole what's going on with the feud. So basically, at the end of the match, it came down to Big Daddy being the lone foreign member of Team World going up against Nero Casas and Volador Jr. At that point, Big Daddy had just eliminated Carbonario, and then afterwards, Big Daddy after Big Daddy got eliminated, Volador Jr. and Nero Casas started celebrating. While Nero Casas started celebrating, Volador Jr. kind of attacked Nero Casas and got the pin on him and ended up being the ultimate final winner of the match. He later mentioned, and Julio Cesar Rivera on Informa mentioned that there had to be one final winner, and that ended up being Volador Jr. And after that, they all started arguing. It led to everybody throwing out hair challenges, Big Daddy and Nero Casas arguing, Carbonario arguing with Big Daddy defending Volador Jr., Volador Jr. arguing with Nero Casas and Carbonario. So they basically started arguing over who should get a hair match and everything. So that basically was set up after the Grand Prix. The Grand Prix itself was not, I would say it was a good match, but it was underwhelming. It wasn't as good as previous Grand Prix. Actually, even like I think last year's Grand Prix, if it didn't have Michael Elgin in it, I don't know if it would have been as good as it was. Just because lately, I think CML just, Dylan mentioned on Lucha Talk that he thought, actually, I don't know if he mentioned it on Lucha Talk, but we were talking about this off air, and he made the comment that maybe CML should invest on a scouting department or something, just because I think they really do need that. The foreign team looks so much more underwhelming than Team Mexico, and Big Daddy. If you were surprised that he reached the very end of this, first of all, he didn't wrestle much in the match. He ended up reaching the final, and if you were surprised, honestly, you shouldn't have been, just because he's been training with Ultimo Guerrero for the last 6 weeks, and that basically should give you an indication that he might be in CML for a little longer. For sure he's going to be here for a few more weeks, but I would not be shocked if he's in there for a little longer, taking on the spot of Sam Adonis as the lead foreigner in the promotion. I don't know. He didn't look very good in this match, and to pick Nero Casas out of everyone as as the guy he wants to beat. Nero Casas is 5'6", 5'7", and Big Daddy's, I think he's got to be 6'3", 6'4". The discrepancy in size is just doesn't work. I don't think it's something that looks good as far as first of all, Big Daddy isn't good, so in the ring. So I think that's gonna, and we've already seen a lot of guys in CML that aren't good, and you think, oh, Nero Casas, Ultimo Guerrero, and a couple of Rouge, Dragon Lee, all these guys are in CML. These guys should be able to pull out something good out of bad wrestlers, and we've already seen that they can't. They can't. They're not miracle workers. These guys that have been bad have been really bad, and I'm talking Big Daddy, Sabre the main man, Bestia del Ring, Diamante Azul. There's a bunch of guys in CML that are pretty bad. The Espanto Hijo del Signo and Espanto Jr., a couple of other guys. But yeah, I thought the match wasn't that great. I thought the one guy from Team World that I thought was very impressive was Jay Briscoe. And then everybody else was kind of just not that good. There was no real heat in the match. I think it might have also hurt that they had that whole ceremony prior to it, and I felt it went a little too long, and I think the crowd was kind of tired at that point. Luke Hawx, Delirious, and Big Daddy were horrible in this match. I just don't think there's not even I can't even say no, they had their moments. They were not good at all in this. Oraculo, he looked good at certain points, but he's really small. I think Hip Hop Man mentioned it in the Mas Lucha podcast. He said he looks like he should be wrestling with the minis, and he's a small guy. But I think the other thing I have with Oracle is that there's like stories about him that it. I don't think you could actually like keep him long term in the promotion. There's stuff that he kind of has to resolve before he could actually join. And I don't think he did enough to like make me think, oh, I need to have him in my promotion. Taven and Kenny King and the Mecha Wolf 450, I thought they had some good moments at certain points. The Mecha Wolf 450 at this really rough moment where they were going to do a spot where Oraculo was going to jump off the ropes with a moonsault, and Mecha Wolf was going to go through the middle and bottom rope. And what ended up happening is like right when he was going to go through, Oraculo leapt off, like he bounced off the rope, and when he bounced off the rope hit the Mecha Wolf in the face. And I think Mecha Wolf mentioned that he got knocked silly at that point. You saw a couple of guys like Diamantes who kind of cover as if he had kicked him, but that did not look good. And I thought I also think Mecha Wolf was more focused in like trying to get guys to like get like, I think he was the one that was kind of planning out the match for the Team World guys. And unfortunately, I like 3 or 4 guys who weren't very good, and it showed. It's not to say that Team Mexico was that great either. I mean, there was only so much these guys could do, and it really was, like I said, some good moments, some not so good moments. I would not put this as one of the better Grand Prix. Also, I don't think it had any heat whatsoever, so it kind of just hurt that. So like I said, that led to the whole, they announced I think Saturday, they announced that they were going to hold a press conference to announce the anniversary, the 86th anniversary show lineup. And they did so on Wednesday. And already a lot of people are complaining about how the show is pretty much the same. I think they're not focusing so much on the overall show. They're just looking at the main event and seeing how underwhelming it is. We did end up getting a cage match, which, I mean, if you go back even when Sabre and Ultimo Guerrero were arguing, I think it might have been even before that. I think earlier in the year, at some point during the year, there was actually like a bunch of like talk about everybody wanting to be in a cage. I think it was sometime in March or April when guys were already like involved in some other feuds, and they were already talking about, oh, we want a cage match. And then like in May or June, it kind of kept going on. Then when Seabrook joined in, it kind of like that added to it. So it ended up being a cage match. The main event will be cage match with everyone's hair on the line. And the funny thing is, like during the press conference, everybody involved, for the most part, wanted singles matches. And Julio Cesar Rivera said they can actually, they were going to let, the programming department was going to let the wrestlers decide what kind of match they wanted. And it turned out that it wasn't exactly what the wrestlers wanted. It ended up being the usual cage match. And it's unfortunate, but the cage match with everyone's hair on the line will include Ultimo Guerrero, Sabre the Main Man, Gilbert El Boricua, Volador Jr., Big Daddy Yum Yum. I think that's the other thing that people, he refers to himself as Big Daddy Yum Yum, but CML just calls him Big Daddy. I think it's just part of the trend where they think the shorter the name, the more likely the fans are going to understand it, or like, remember him. As that's the whole thing in Lucha Libre. The longer the name, the less likely they're going to remember. The shorter the name, they'll probably remember you a little easier. Also in it are Nero Casas and Barbaro Carbonario. And I think the one thing I will say is that Big Daddy's a very good talker. He did a really good job in the press conference and also on the Informa show. At one point, he took off his shoe and tossed it at Nero Casas and told him that he was going to make him kiss his foot after he beat him in the cage, after he shaved his head off and beat him in the cage. And Casas just completely no-sold it. And then he started trying to get Volador Jr. to agree to, like, also, he asked him if he wanted to join in and have Casas kiss his feet. Volador Jr. did not seem too pleased about that, did not seem interested. Nero Casas' response was that he didn't even know who Big Daddy was, which is pretty much what everybody was wondering as well. Ultimo Guerrero joked that he wished Big Daddy could wrestle as well as he talked. Unfortunately, he doesn't. and that's a bad thing for CMLL and for those of us watching. They basically just took everything that, you know, I don't think people, and the reaction to the cage match has been very negative from a lot of fans. And I mentioned this in the most recent Lucha report that I really think no matter what they would have announced, be it the cage or just Sabre versus Ultimo Guerrero, or if they would have done the Volador Jr. versus Forastero, or the hair match between Volador Jr. and Cavernario, or the three-way Gilbert, Sabre, and Ultimo Guerrero. I don't think the fans would have been happy with any of that stuff, because as long as LA Park and Roosh are around, they're always going to want that, and it's going to continue on, especially because as long as Roosh is available and he's working for CML, it's always going to constantly be brought up. LA Park always brings it up. That's all his Twitter account is. It's constantly him just retweeting that stuff, how people want that match. I honestly think let CML catches, and everyone deserves a little bit of the blame in this, because CMLL and Roosh and LA Park, let's not forget there was interviews from everyone involved, and they all said when that match didn't happen that they did never agree to that match, and that they didn't want anybody to get the blame for this. That was just the fans insinuating that was going to happen. And that is not true. They were actually leading to that stuff. I mean, we watched the shows. We were watching every single week, and there was always, the end of it was always LA Park and Roosh throwing out challenges. They would get interviewed backstage. They would talk about how they wanted that hair match. They even had a moment where Julio Cesar Rivera was talking about that would be was the likely outcome. That was going to be the likely main event for the 85th anniversary, last year's show. And then, like, as soon as it didn't happen, everybody backtracked and said, we never agreed. We never said it was going to happen. We never said that. That's all a lie. And I mean, they look like complete idiots doing it, and they still do. I mean, I'm even saying Roosh and Alley Park because they get the benefit that they're the rustlers, and they could always just blame CMLL for not doing it. But they also deserve it. Alley Park did this with Dr. Wagner Jr. as well. They never had the mask match, and look, it never happened. And Wagner ended up losing it to Psycho Clown years later. I mean, think about it. Alley Park, Dr. Wagner Jr. were feuding since like 2003, 2004. So it's been a long time that they were feuding, and that never happened. They kept doing the whole build up, never happened, and it happened with Psycho Clown instead. So same thing with Roosh. I think this is just one of those things where they have the social media, they have the advantage, and CML is not going to say anything because they could say what they want, but they're going to get trashed because nobody involved in CML wants to really be the public, even the face of the promotion. Sophia Alonso, I mean, where has she been? Nobody's really showing their face. They've never been the type of promotion that has somebody that talks about, why they decided on doing stuff. So, that they're always going to be the ones that are going to get blamed. And like I said, as long as Roosh and Alley Park are around, their fans are going to want that. This was a match that wasn't. I think there's one match that I think right now that might actually satisfy fans, and I think that would be Caristico versus Mystico. If it was built up for a couple more than 1 month, if it was built up for over a series of months, and they kind of turned Mystico, if they were to turn Mystico a little bit more of a heel, I think it would be a match that would have done really well. This show's going to sell out no matter what, honestly. But as far as like just fan interest, I think that would be the only thing I think that would rival or even come close to the LA Park Roosh feud would be that. But they're not going to do it. I mean, because that would require one of those guys' willingness to drop their mask. I think Mystico, in a way, because his brothers have brought up how they kind of think he's not been pushed enough in CMLL, and they kind of like talk about how they think maybe it's time for him to maybe change and be something different. I think there might be more of a willingness to do it. But I think the problem would be that CML would always want to keep the Mystico name and have a character, so it would be kind of a pointless thing to do. Much like LA Park Roosh, I don't think it's going to happen. So that's kind of like the main event for the anniversary. Your people are going to want something different, and they're going to give you the opposite, and people are going to complain about it. The rest of the card is actually I've seen a few people say that they're underwhelmed with the card. I would say the cage match and the women's match are the two things I'm not that interested in, but everything else seems pretty solid. The opener is going to be Stigma, Rey Cometa, El Audaz versus Misterioso Jr., Tiger, and Virus. I think that's a really good opener. I have a feeling because Stigma is related to the promoter, the people who run the Arena Puebla, take care of that venue for CML. I have a feeling that's kind of like a thank you to Puebla for they're the guys in charge not alienating any female wrestlers. There's been a story recently that there was a story a couple of months ago when Silhouette came back that she wasn't there because there was one of the guys in charge of one of the guys who worked in the CML office in Guadalajara had actually told her that she had to do some favors in order to return to the arena. And since that time, that guy, obviously you've seen Silhouette's back in CMLL, and she's already also returned to Guadalajara, Arena Coliseo Guadalajara. So, and that guy got actually fired from his job. So I have a feeling the guy who got fired is Magnum, and Magnum happens to be the father of Esfinge. So I kind of have an inkling that maybe that's something to keep an eye on. I think there's a slight chance that maybe Esfinge might be following his tag team partner's lead and move on to becoming an independent. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's possible. But the opener looks pretty solid. I mean, it's got Rey Cometa. That's the other thing. I found it funny that the people that complained about this show, the rest of the lineup, all those people, like, if you look at who they root for, all those guys are on the show. So, like, Hechicero's on it, Rey Cometa's on it, and Dragon Lee's on it, although there's some doubt as far as Dragon Lee's going to be, whether or not he's going to be on it. So I just thought that was amusing that they still found something to complain about. The second match, Dulce Gardenia, making his first anniversary show, will team up with Diamante Azul and Titan versus Hijo del Villano Tercero. I believe that's that might be his first or second. I'm not really sure. He'll be teaming up with Hechicero and Rey Bucanero. I would have loved to have seen Atlantis Jr. in Diamante Azul's spot, or maybe even Titan and just move Titan up to a higher match. I think that match should be good. I have a feeling it'll be good. I have a feeling Diamante Azul might not even be in that match. I would not be shocked if he gets pulled off that match. He has been in the past, so it's like it wouldn't shock me. But there's enough there that could be good, especially with Hechicero on the Rudo side. The third match is Dallas versus Marcella, or should Marcella lose to her Japanese opponent on an upcoming show in they're gonna be wrestling on mid-September. They're gonna be wrestling in Japan, so Marcella's going to be defending the CMLL World's Women's title in Japan. So if she loses it to her Japanese opponent, then the Japanese opponent will be wrestling Dallas. They have not mentioned who her opponent is in Japan, but I think this match, they've already done it so many times that I think it's just another repeat. It's not going to be that interesting. I have a feeling Dallas is going to end up winning just because that's the way CML is booking right now. I think the people that are kind of gaining power in the last year have been, Dallas, Ultimo Guerrero, really them two. I mean, Dallas just pretty much a lock as the main women in the promotion. And Ultimo Guerrero, if you look at the whole roster, everything that's going on in CML, you could tell that Ultimo Guerrero has more control of what's going on in the promotion. The fourth match will be a Relevos Increíbles, Niebla Roja and Ángel de Oro teaming up with Mephisto versus Gran Guerrero, Euphoria, and Dragon Lee. That should be a good match. I don't know if Dragon Lee's going to be in that match just because there's some talk that he might actually be on the Ring of Honor show, and that's happening that same day. That's the other thing. Rush is working Ring of Honor, and that same day, which you would have thought CML would have decided to run the anniversary on a different date, just so they could have one of their top stars on the show. But they decided not to, and I have a feeling I wouldn't be shocked if Dragon Lee gets pulled, just because the match that he's on, it being the fourth match and it being a Relevos Increíbles, and really the way the guys that are in it you could just tell it's possible that they'll just have Soberano Jr. join the team. If Dragon Lee was in the semi-main event, I think that would have meant that he was definitely going to be on the show. I don't know. It's possible he's going to be on it. And if he is, then I'm going to be like, why not they should have just had him in the semi-main event. So before I go to the mask match, the Observer issue came out earlier as I was recording this podcast, and they did confirm that Dragon Lee was going to be on the anniversary show and not going to be in Ring of Honor after all. So that makes it even stranger that they have him in this Relevos Increíbles match. Why do that? I have no idea. They should have just had him replace. Like I said, they should have him be in there with Mystico and Caristico in the semi-main event. But, at least we know he's going to be on the show, and it should be a good show. It should be a good match, with him and Gran Guerrero Euphoria as a trio against Mephisto, Niebla Roja, and Angel de Oro. After that, the fifth match is Microman versus Chamuel, Mask versus Mask. This has probably been the best booked rivalry that CML has had this year. They've actually, and not only has it been better booked than most anything else, they also have the Microman and Chamuel have actually held their really been solid as far as building this up. They've had as usual, they have good matches. Again, they have good matches between themselves, and they're good rivals. Chamuel is a really good Rudo, does a really good job of getting the crowd to hate him and to root for Microman and all the other Micro Technicos. Microman, as you know, the smallest wrestler in pro wrestling. And he gets a lot of it was funny because Gran Guerrero was on Informa, and he was talking about how they were asking him to pick a winner, and of course, being a Rudo, he picked Chamuel. But he was talking about how Microman has an angel over his shoulder just because he has that ability. He connects with the fans. He made the comment that Microman lifts his little arm up into the air, and the crowd in Arena Mexico really reacts, and he's really super over. And I think this match, they've gotten some good reactions in just like even their singles match, in trios matches. But I think this being a mask match, I totally think that this is going to get a really strong reaction. It's a one fall match. I have a feeling that's probably going to go a little longer than 10 minutes. Even if it doesn't go beyond 10 minutes, it's still going to be something that's going to be really good. And they've been able to pull off stuff the way they've worked the last match. I think it shows that they could actually do some good work in the match. The other thing is that Microman wanted his father, Kemonito, to be his second. I'm surprised a lot of people still don't realize that's his dad. I had a few people tell me that they were shocked. I'm guessing they're not regular listeners or visitors to my website, because I've said that several times. Or even if you follow me on Twitter, I've mentioned it whenever Microman's on Informa. That constantly gets brought up for the last year or 2 years. So it's not anything really that's new. Chamuel said he wanted Templario in his corner. Templario and him are paisanos from the same area, so he kind of was hoping for him to be in it, to be a second. I think that's a pretty fair. If you're gonna have a corner man, I think it's a pretty even situation. Templario on one side, Kemonito on the other. I don't see any. I think that's perfectly fine, but should be fun. Actually, I think it'd be kind of cool because I think Templario might take a bump for Microman. The sixth match, the semi-main event, is the La Nueva Generación Dinamita of Sansón, Cuatrero, and Forastero, defending the Mexican national trios titles against Místico, Caristico, and Valiente. Like I said, I thought this is going to be a good match. I just kind of felt that they've done so much about doing the Dragon Lee teaming up with Místico, and whenever they team up, they usually have Caristico or Volador Jr., that you kind of assume that they were going to just continue the trend of having the supposed dream team, which is, members of that group always kind of teaming up together. I'm kind of surprised they went with Valiente. If it was up to me, I would change that and just have Valiente move to the Relevos Increíbles and Dragon Lee move up to the semi-main, because I think that would make the match that much better. And you really need a really strong match on this show, especially with the likelihood that everyone's going to hate on the cage match, and I think the women's match. But overall, I don't think this show looks pretty good. Honestly, I think people are just disappointed in the announcement of the main event. Since everybody's, like I said, as long as Rush and LA Park exists, they're gonna keep wanting that. And it didn't happen, and I think people wanted something a little different. But like I said, even if they would announce like let's say Dragon Lee versus Sansone or something like that, I think people would have still reacted in a completely similar fashion of, like, oh, they didn't give us what we wanted. The entire card I think is a little bit stronger than I think last year's show. But, like I said, the main event, I think, is going to be the thing that people are going to remember. And it's not going to be, unless these guys pull out a miracle. And it would have to be a huge miracle, because cage matches in Lucha Libre usually are really bad. I don't know what to expect from this. I don't think that's going to be a good thing. In other news, this past week, I think on Monday, August 26th, Dr. Caronte passed away. He was the father of Caristico, Argenis, Argos, and Dr. Caronte Jr. He's been around for a long time. There was a lot of confusion as to which Dr. Caronte it was, because he was actually the third version of that character. There were two others prior to that, and a lot of people, even like Dave Meltzer, he still had it wrong. He had it listed in a weird way where he said Miguel Uribe, that's who it was, passed away. Was actually, he said it was the other guy. He used the other guy's name, but said it was him, and he also wrestled as Dr. Caronte, and that's not how it was. The other guy was the original. Then Dr. Caronte, this version, the Miguel Uribe, was the third one. He was also related. He was the cousin of Tony Salazar. That's the connection that family has. There was a lot of people were talking about his passing. Caristico got a couple wins and honored his father. He dedicated the wins to his father. A lot of moment of applauses across Lucha Libre. Some other news. A lot of comings and goings not only in CMLL but also AAA. Sangre Azteca and Triton left CMLL, and Goya Kong left AAA. Goya Kong is going independent. Sangre Azteca already, they're all going independent, but Sangre Azteca already showed up on the Nacion Lucha Libre show, which has been having, there's been some stories of them having some money issues. Alberto El Patron did an interview right after the last show where he said that a lot of the issues that the company has are, they were actually backed up in pay, so they finally got caught up at that during that taping. But he kind of said, a lot of people expect it to be an easy thing to get through. He's like, it's just like any business. The first year, you don't really make a lot of money. And he's hoping that if they're able to continue that they'll finally start making money. And, and he said, it's not really the wrestlers that have complained. It's been the other people, like the announcer, the one announcer who posted a video saying that he hadn't been paid. He had an issue with that. He didn't really. Alberto wasn't as hot on it, but Sangre Azteca ended up going to Nacion Lucha Libre, much to no one's surprise. I think as soon as he left CMLL, everybody just assumed he was going to go there, just because I don't think anybody thinks he fits in AAA right now. I could see them bringing him once as a luchador sorpresa, or being one of the many guys that they try out as luchador sorpresas and see if he works out. Maybe they keep him as a regular, or bring him in a little more frequently or infrequently, however AAA handles their talent. Goya Kong really wasn't that used either in AAA, so she's gone. She's an independent. She suffered an injury within the first year of her being in AAA, and it really never panned out for her. And really, I think at this point, when she first joined, the women's division wasn't as deep. It wasn't really something that was it wasn't very pushed. And now the last year, they've added a lot more women, and they've had a lot better women also. So I kind of don't think she was in AAA's plans. Triton announced he was leaving CMLL before he even left CMLL. I think he wrestled the show in Guadalajara, And that's when he actually announced that he was leaving. It might have been a week prior to that he announced he was leaving, but nobody had noticed it. He had posted on his Facebook page. But he was actually booked for the Ring of Honor Global Wars Espectacular tour that's coming up. And he's been very adamant that he's leaving CMLL. And I think last week he was announced as being part of the Pro Wrestling Mexico show, which is an indie promotion that Conan is involved with. And he's kind of talking about how he's getting more opportunities. He did an interview where he kind of like said he wasn't getting any opportunities in CMLL. And I think when he first left, he left like 2 years ago, I think in 2017, and he was in the United States. And his situation at that time was that he was working. He actually had a real job, and he was saying that he was making more in construction than he was in wrestling at that point. But the weird thing is that he was in the United States, and he very rarely wrestled while in the United States. So he really wasn't doing that much of getting himself noticed either. So, because there's been guys who they've left promotions, and when they go to Mexico, the United States, they're actually getting booked. Laredo Kid's a prime example. A guy who, he started getting booked on smaller shows, and all of a sudden he started getting bigger and bigger. AIW and a couple of AAW, and then all these other promotions started getting him, and PWG. So he kind of built his name up on the independent scene, and until finally he's now, PWG, back to AAA, working far bigger independent promotions, and also he'll probably end up being in AEW also. I think that's something Triton didn't really do. I think he just thought being in CML they were going to do everything, and as we've seen, that's not the case when you're an undercard guy in CMLL. He left, and he's also booked Wrestling Flamita, and he also wrote that these were the opportunities I was always hoping for. I prefer the way Puma King left, where he really didn't trash the promotion or constantly harp about I never got opportunities or anything like that. He didn't get any. He left, and he actually did something with his career. And I think he's a far better. He's the example that any wrestler should really take. If you're not happy where you're at, you got to do your own thing, and actually work hard to actually accomplish something. And I think that's what Puma King has done. And I hope Triton does that as well. And he also changed his name to Ray Triton. So yeah, this weekend will be his last as being a CMLL guy. And from that point forward, he will be an independent wrestler. The funny thing is, I do think he kind of got a little bit of a push, but it's not the type of push that you're really thinking of. I think a lot of guys, if you're working the second match and move up to the third or fourth match, I don't know if they actually think that's a big difference. And I think the way CML books, it's not, it doesn't help that with CML, there's so many guys that are so horrible in main events and semi-main events that you immediately look at that and you're like, at least, I think the only positive is that at least you're not working the opener with Hijo Signo and Espanto Jr. I think that's the only bright side of not working, of actually working in the third or fourth match. There was actually a AAA show on August 10th that had a really good match. Actually, the entire show was pretty good. If you haven't watched it, I think they probably already have it. They might already have it available on their YouTube channel, but if not, it's on their Twitch channel. But it was a really good match. Phoenix beating Laredo Kid, Puma King, and Taurus to retain the AAA World Mega Heavyweight title. I thought this match was excellent. It's definitely something you should go out of your way to watch. One of the better matches I've seen this year. It didn't have the crowd reaction that you hoped. Kind of think there's this weird thing with lucha fans. When they get a good match, sometimes they don't really react to it. But if that match was in PWG, I think people would have been calling it like a 5 or 6 star match. And so that match was really good with Phoenix, Laredo Kid, Puma King, and Taurus. I think Taurus is kind of just reaching that level where he's kind of starting to show that he is a worthy main event type wrestler. Puma King, is working. He just worked the main event in DDT also. So I think they're all starting to show that they are far better than they were getting earlier in their career. And it also has to do with the fact that they're kind of growing up a little bit more in as far as what they could do in the ring. But Torres, more than anything, I think he's really shown a lot of progression. It also helps that there's Phoenix and Laredo Kid in the match. Laredo Kid's a veteran, and he's been around doing this for a really long time. There was there was some bad news from AAA with Hijo Vikingo suffering a leg injury, and he's going to be out of action for a few weeks. I think there's still about a couple more weeks left for him to be out. He's definitely not going to be wrestling in the New York show. I think he's coming back early October, I think. And so that was some bad news for AAA. Hopefully they don't like squash the whole Jinetes del Aire trio just because he's out for a few weeks. I don't think they will, but hopefully they don't. Some other news: MLW and the Crash have reached an agreement. They're going to start working together. There's actually going to be a co-promoted show in Tijuana in October featuring MLW and the Crash. I don't know if CML talent will be on that show. I don't really know how big that. I'm guessing that means LA Park will probably definitely be on the Crash show, since he's part of MLW and he's very. That's the one promotion he's actually kind of been very loyal to. So that actually is something that should be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what the lineup will look like, just because I mean, other than some of the names in MLW, I'm not really that familiar with everyone on that roster. So, and then again, it's the same thing with the Crash. Who really knows who's part of the Crash at this moment with so much talent going in and out of the promotions right now? Some other news: Jorge Bolli, better known to us as Hijo del Fantasma, and for those of you who watch Lucha Underground, he's also known as King Cuerno, was announced as joining WWE. He was at the Performance Center, took his picture with his Performance Center T-shirt, and he's officially with WWE now. Good for him. I mean, he's been somebody that's been wanting to go there for like the last 3 years. I think after the first season of Lucha Underground, he was trying to get out of his contract to go there, and he had some issues with AAA and Lucha Underground, El Rey Network. So they actually got that resolved, and then later on, it got a little ugly between them with him getting an attorney to break out of his contract. I think that's going to be an ongoing issue with whoever's under contract with Lucha Underground, who hasn't left. Even though they're not, I don't think there is like 0% chance that there's going to be a fifth season at this point now. And I just can't. I just think some of the guys who are having a trouble getting out of it, maybe they just certain people have been successful at getting out of it without any like long-term issues, but there's been a few guys who had I think Willie Mack was the only one that's really like the one remaining guy who's kind of had issues and hasn't really I'm guessing at this point he might actually be able to get something better out of it now, because if they're not around, I mean, there's no real reason for them to continue to hold these contracts over these guys' heads. It's funny, Hijo Fantasma is joining WWE, but a couple of weeks ago, Callisto and Grand Metalik posted a few tweets where they seem to be counting down the days that their contracts were coming to an end with WWE. That's the way it is, life of a luchador in WWE. Guys want to join, and months later they want to quit, or in this case, years later. But yeah, that I think that's common with everybody in every promotion. And that's about it for this week as far as news goes, and what's going on with Lucha Libre. I think we'll probably do a podcast after the anniversary. Maybe get Kurt on, since we'll be going to Battle Los Angeles night 1. So maybe do a podcast afterwards. I think that would probably be that would be the plan. I don't see any reason to do. I'm not even sure if I'm going to watch the AAA New York show, just because I don't even know what's going to be on this show. And they already announced, like I said, it was going to be $30. So, I'd probably rather save my money as far as spending it on a show that I don't even know what's going to be on. So that's it for this week. Be sure to keep up to date with the latest Lucha Libre news at luchaworld.com. And if you are looking for some old school wrestling, visit retrowrestling.com. Be sure to check out the LuchaWorld Patreon page as well. We have additional content on there, including the Lucha Classica podcast, Lucha magazine write-ups, and we'll be adding some new content on there really soon. If you become a patron, you have 3 reward tiers at $1, $3, and $5. On Patreon, I've added a Lucha Classica podcast covering December 1981 with talk of the Paraguayo versus Chris Adams feud. Also included on that show was some talk of Adrian Street and Abdullah the Butcher in Mexico. The very first EMLL versus UWA show held in Arena, Mexico, and also El Santos Houdini act that actually made it to theaters in Mexico. And there's also a lot. I read an angry fan mail. There's going to be I'm going to try to find at least some angry fan mail for every episode, just because I think it just makes it drives it home the idea or the understanding that there's always been angry fans, no matter what. It's nothing new. It's not like AEW, WWE, these promotions, any other promotion that currently exists. They weren't the reason that this started being people being disgruntled. I think it's just that there's so much more ease of access to complain about wrestling with social media that it's like it became a bigger deal. But it's been that way for the longest of time, since the beginning of time in Lucha Libre and in the beginning of time of the world, honestly. Also, I've added several Lucha Magazine write-ups, and I'll also be doing a retro wrestling podcast. That should be tons of fun. That will be starting up, I think, probably sometime this month. It will be focusing on a lot of older wrestling and, like, of course, it being retro wrestling. And I think it's gonna be interesting. I think people will enjoy it. There's also another podcast I'm thinking of working on. I've already told Kurt about it. I don't know if he'll be a part of it on a few shows, but when I do some of these shows, it's a lot easier just to, like, if it's very informative, it's easier for me to just do it on my own. Because usually, like, if you have a second person or third person or more people, they start going into off tangent stuff, or they go off track and they want to fast forward to the time period when they started watching wrestling or when they first saw that wrestler. So it makes it very difficult. There's certain guests that are really good at, like, going in, like, following a certain timeline, but a lot of times when you do a podcast, that's not the case. People just go crazy and go their own separate ways and do their own thing. So that should be something that will be coming up soon on the Patreon page as well. So again, thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you again real soon.